All right, everybody, welcome to a very special conversation. That's weird. I don't know why. This is a back-to-school special is what we're going to call this one. Jeremy Padawer from Jazwares. So happy to have you. You're taking Twitter by storm with these scavenger hunts and these collectibles giveaways. It's been great. Welcome to Yes Have Some, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm having a lot of fun online and kind of pursuing my lifelong passion.
Well, as you can see, I'm a toy person, so
oh my god, love it.
I can talk toys, and that's what we're gonna do. So I guess people who listen to our podcast probably know a little bit about you. You've got a long history in the toy industry. You started off at Mattel, and really made a name for yourself in the industry at Jax with the WWF, WWE Classic Superstars line. And now Jazwares. So we were at Toy Fair this year. It was our first time being there. And I got to say, just aesthetically, you guys killed it with your booth. That was a beautiful booth.
Thank you. Yeah, no, there's a big team at Jazwares, and I will say that it is truly a lot of passionate people. And even during this time with COVID, people that would generally be focused in driving those shows and events were like, hey, we still want to do something else. So we've repurposed everyone that does those events to work on product. I mean, we've had such a wonderful team. They're so passionate. They're so ready to roll. And I'm glad that you had that experience at Toy Fair, because that's everything we would want you to have.
Yeah. And obviously, I guess we'll work backwards. So let's go ahead and just start off with, Jazwares is kind of, I don't want to say up and coming, but a relatively newer name. I mean, not as old as Hasbro or Mattel,
right?
But you guys got some great licenses. You're doing some great stuff, and AEW figures are coming. I mean, I guess when I asked our audience, like what people really want to know is, especially as far as AEW goes, is how did that partnership come together? Who made the first call? You've got a long history, launching very successful wrestling figure lines. So it's a match made in heaven. So I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, we are too. So in October of last year, Wicked Cool Toys, which was the company that I was a partner of with my business partners, Michael Rinsler and Thomas Poon, we sold to Jazwares through Allegheny Capital. And basically they combined Jazwares and Wicked Cool Toys, and now we are Jazwares, one Jazwares company. Since we actually acquired Kelly Toy, which made Squishmallows, which is like one of the biggest, actually the biggest plush brand out there. But October, that acquisition was made. And prior to that, about 6 months prior to that, so around March or April of last year, I noticed that there was an upstart wrestling organization that was owned by or co-owned by a billionaire and had amazing talent attached to it. And it just reminded me of the era of WCW versus WWF. Yeah. And because I've been involved in wrestling stuff for 20 years, I came in on wrestling just after the Attitude Era, and we can get into that. But I'm very, very familiar and excited because I knew that it takes a lot of capital and a lot of power to launch a national or global wrestling organization. And so when I saw that, and I saw the Khan family was involved, and then I saw the talent with Cody and Jericho and Omega and all these guys, Young Bucks, it sort of blew my mind because I realized, like, holy moly, like, it's been 20 years since there was a global organization that truly had the power, financial and creative. So we reached out. I reached out right away. Like, want to talk to you guys. Got a couple good leads from some wonderful people. And as a result, it put us in a situation. We were on the phone with them. And when we were on the phone, it wasn't hard for me to sell the concept because, we've had so much experience in this area. So, but it still took a few months to go through all of the due diligence, and we signed a deal. And really, right close to my heart. I mean, wrestling and Pokemon and a few other brands are my favorite brands. So it truly is like one of the miracles of life to, believe in something, follow your passions, and then accumulate experiences that people actually trust. I'm thrilled to be where I am right now in my career.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think like for you, for those who don't remember, for those who do, Classic Superstars was this incredible line that kind of relaunched my personal excitement in collecting and wrestling figures, way back, 2006, 2007, something along those lines. Oh, look at that.
Ultimate Warrior, New York Toy Fair. This was October of 2013 when we first launched Classic Superstars. And I'm sorry, 2003. Did I say 13?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm old, man.
It's
the
fine.
decades
it's fine.
Together.
Time is meaningless.
Yeah, October 2003.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was 29 years old, and I was, excited, relatively new to that company, and dead set on bringing wrestling back because, essentially after the Attitude Era, wrestling was still being treated like a toy. And my mindset was, no, we need to turn this into a collectible. And so we were able to do so by creating something like Classic Superstars. And I will say that I never will forget, Vince McMahon hearing out the plan and approving it. Essentially, I didn't know if we were going to be able to get Ultimate Warrior or Bret Hart in that first wave, but we were able to because, when McMahon says, if it's good for business, he means it, even though he was at odds with a couple of those superstars at the time. Right. And there was no alumni group at the time either. I mean, if you remember, it was like whatever's right in your face, whatever was being pushed on TV, that was the talent. And my mindset was like, wait a second, I've loved wrestling my whole life. I grew up in Memphis and the South. And how about all those guys that would come in regionally? And it was honestly one of the best times of my life. Talking to all these guys on the phone, going to dinner with some of them is crazy. Crazy.
I can't imagine. I mean, to be able to, and that was a time when like nostalgia wasn't, now everything's nostalgia. Everything's looking backwards, reactivating old brands, which I know you guys are doing, which we can get to. Capitalize, you look at what Mattel and Hasbro are doing right now with like Ghostbusters, Masters of the Universe, Star Wars. It's everyone's looking back, retro packaging.
Cool.
So now you're in this situation where you've had this experience where you saw an opening, right? You saw this opening in the market that says there's collectors out there who want Ultimate Warrior, they want Bret Hart, they want, all these guys they knew from childhood. And you did that. It's an expansive line. It's and I know this has got to be close to your heart. And this has to make you feel good. The secondary market, the value is great.
Great.
And
I love that.
Yeah, that's everything. Like
it was designed for that.
Right.
I mean, I would say the one thing that I like as much as those brands is macroeconomic theory. Like I love macroeconomics.
All right, let's do it.
Essentially, it's very basic. The basic concept is supply and demand and rarity. So if you have regardless of what your demand is, if your supply is slightly below demand, it creates rarity.
Yeah.
That's essentially the laws of economics. And so for me, when I see a situation where there is a very clear group of affinity collectors, especially in something that I love, right? I know that doing a 1 of 100 is certainly below demand. In fact, it's so far below demand that it creates a secondary market value that makes people excited.
Yep.
That's the psychology of it. You feel extremely excited by something that's a limited edition. And it's a good thing, even though it's annoying to some people because, I want to have everything. But no, here's the good part. By doing that, it gives you more longevity. It gives you a longer time horizon to create everything that you want to create. So if you want the B and C characters that probably won't be celebrated again until perhaps someone crazy enough does it.
Right.
If you want that, you have to have the high-end stuff and pull in people who are not your traditional everyday wrestling figure collector, but pull in people who just like secondary market value, and pull in your casual collector because they feel excited. When you do that, you get longevity because you've created an economic system that works. And so that's one component of it. The second component of it is understanding how to manage your mixes. So if I had a case pack of 12, I would have the A-level guys as 2. I would have the B-level superstars, men and women, as 1. And I would have the C-level as 1 every 2 master carton. Again, what it does is it solves a huge problem at the retail space in terms of selling through. And because of the rarity associated with the C-level characters, it makes them exciting and interesting, just like an A-level character.
Right.
So there's a science, economics, psychology, and it creates market demand that would be greater than what it would normally be. And that's the whole economic theory behind it.
Well, I love it. And these are concepts that need to be discussed in a more long form like this. You can't, when you're running a toy company or you're, a brand manager at a toy company and you've got collectors going, I can't find this thing. There's too many scalpers, X, Y, and Z. You can't really explain this in a tweet. Like this is, and like you just said, there's a psychological component to it and there's a business component. And, so I love it. I mean, I collect all sorts of toys, all sorts of collectibles. I have got a general interest in the hobby, as you can see. And one of my all-time favorite lines, which I brought something to, and you'll probably be familiar. Speaking of rarity, and there we got the Jax, the Rocky, one of 1800. Ringside Collectibles exclusive. The Rocky line's really interesting because you had your hands in on that, and that's a line that at the time was pretty available, and I remember it going to like discount and KB 3 for $10, and now those figures are $60, $70, $80 a pop all day because as soon as it dried up, then the demand sets in. So it's very, very interesting.
Well, and minty fresh on card, a lot of that stuff gets busted open and can breathe, as our friends say.
Yep.
But the bottom line is, that happens over time. And over time, the other thing that happens is that more people discover it. Mm-hmm. So if 100 people discover something when it's at retail, but over the next 15 years, 1,000 more people discover it, scarcity, demand higher than supply. And then some of the supply over the course of time just becomes obsolescent. It gets thrown away. Someone drives over it. They drop it out of an airplane. Who knows what happened to this stuff? But at the end of the day, scarcity.
Yeah. I've had a couple Rocky figures I've bought in package that have kind of shown up at the front doorstep, basically disintegrating. So I open all my stuff, so it's fine. But what I love about a line like Rocky, or specifically Classic Superstars, and what gets me excited as a collector is it's such an extensive line. So if you're diving in for the first time on Classic Superstars, obviously you're well behind the curve because it's been 15, 20 years. And but as a collector and that hunt and, trying to hunt down the rare ones, and like you say, the AB, and it's always the C characters that become the hardest ones to find because of all the reasons you've already talked about. It's great.
Matt Cardona just collected everything, and I was getting texts every day like "F you, you suck," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't say any of the bad words.
No, it's fine. We have a segment on our show called The Fuck Budget where we talk about how many fucks we give about certain toys and toy lines. So you're good.
All right. That's good to know. Yeah. I'm going to use exactly 0 of those on my budget.
Gotcha.
But what I will do is I will use other words like fudge.
Okay.
There
you go. So yeah, we've had Matt on the show, and those guys do a great job. And I love the internet toy communities is a pretty damn cool place. So
it's the best. I mean, honestly, I think one thing I had said recently is that the collector community is amazing because what it does is it gives outsiders like me a place. Like I grew up in Tennessee and Mississippi. I always felt out of place. I was a Jewish kid in Mississippi. There were 30 of us in the town. Not that that's, look, everyone's affiliated with something.
Right.
And that just be my religious affiliation. But when there's nobody else, it does leave you in a very judgy place to be like, what am I a part of? But I was also a part of being a collector. Even as a kid, I was writing baseball players. I was collecting stamps and coins and cards. And I will tell you, it was being a part of something bigger than myself that really led to this and led me down the path. So I love the collector community because I am a collector. And whether I was making toys or collectibles or not, I would still be a collector. I mean, so it's that mentality, absolutely, that sort of, leads me to spending time with you because we're the same philosophy. We're the same people.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. So, I was, Goldberg. I was a Jewish kid in 20 minutes south of Atlanta. I think if I was about 20 minutes north of Atlanta, I would have had more camaraderie as far as being Jewish. But 20 minutes south of Atlanta, nobody even, until Bill Goldberg debuted in WCW, no one had ever even heard of my last name before. And then it was just, is that your uncle? It's like, no. This happens to be a pretty famous name outside of, Stockbridge, Georgia. But anyways.
I think the answer to, is Goldberg your uncle? I think the answer is yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, exactly. At least somebody's talking to me. But I was the same way. I was a huge basketball card collector, and it's been really cool. I've kind of kept up with the trading card market over the years, and to see how like the 90s had that overabundance of cards, and then the whole market crashed, and then eBay flooded the market. But now some of that mid 90s stuff is actually starting to rise in price. And
definitely, I'll give you. So as we're talking about stuff, I'll just pull something. So I recently did something I never expected to do. So this is a 1989 Bowman Tiffany Ken Griffey Jr. in PSA 10 condition.
Very cool.
Okay. I, in a million years, would have never expected to collect anything from the late 80s, which was the most overproduced, over-delivered, over-everything time for cards. But I collected this primarily because a few things have happened. PSA came in, in the last 20 years and has become like the standard with BGS in terms of grading. And it allows you to take what was, let's just make it a triangle, what was an overabundant supply of product, and then to zero cast it just on this very tip of the triangle of the PSA 10s and for other PSA 9s and 8s that make it interesting to collect into that stuff. So the lower grade stuff may not be worth anything. Right. The highest grade stuff is actually valuable. Like even the Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck, if you go in with just a regular Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr., it's worth in the tens of dollars.
Right.
But the PSA 10 is like a $1,400 card. So I like some of that late 80s stuff. It's shocking that it actually came around, but it has everything to do with the grading services. Otherwise, it wouldn't, there wouldn't be much value.
Yeah, it's the grading services for sure. And then when you insert that nostalgia, which we're talking about, which now, the Last Dance documentary, the Bulls documentary, which was when I was like, I'm going to start my on-card Chicago Bulls autograph collection. At the same time as every other person, on eBay. But I got everybody I want except for Jordan, which I feel like all Jordan autographs are basically unaffordable at this point. But one day I'll get one.
I'll show you one. This is one of my grail items. It's usually in my safety deposit box.
Oh, cool.
And it's not anything that you would ever expect.
Okay.
But it is. So do you remember Starting Lineup?
Of course, yeah. So
this is the only BGS 10 Jordan 88 first year Starting Lineup card.
That's
out
great.
of the zillions of starting lineups that have ever been made. This is the only BGS 10 that's even in the 88 line, and it may be the only BGS 10 in starting lineup ever graded because these cards were just so imperfect. So to me, I look at this Jordan and I go like, this is a serious, awesome, freaking amazing card. But you know what? Starting lineup has never really been given the respect as a card. But the valuation, even on the starting lineup stuff, is starting to tick up as well.
Yeah, because I remember I was collecting starting lineups. So I was born in 84. So, Perfect. 91, 92. I remember we would always go, my stepdad worked for the government. So we would go to the PX. Cool. We'd go on base, and they always had a lot of starting lineups. They'd get probably all the, the overrun or whatever. And there was a time when like those early release Jordan, Magic Johnson, David Robinson, like all those players, they were ticking up in price. And then that same thing with the cards, it just crashed. And now
Yeah.
in 2020, they're creeping back up again. So very cool. That card is amazing. That, and I remember looking at those cards, and they're kind of cheap, really cheap cardboard, off center, cut poorly. So that's great. That's definitely a holy grail.
So getting this in this condition, it's just so rare. And I think about it because I know I'm close with the people that actually even worked on the starting lineup cards, even to kick it off. Like one of my buddies, Tom McGrath, was at Kenner at the time. And it was just so mass produced. But again, grading makes a demand curve change, because if you have 1 million of something, but then you get all the way to the top and you have one.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. The other 999,000 plus are irrelevant if you're collecting for grade, because then there's only one that everyone can have. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the ways I look at collecting, because I look under rocks. I mean, like, for instance, I'll give you one more. Cool. The 1999 Charizard PSA 10 is first edition base card, is a $60,000 card now. Okay. It's very, very valuable and very expensive. But 3 years prior, Cardis did a Prism card for Charizard. They did a red and a green. The total population of this card is 59. So it's exactly 6 times more rare than that very expensive Charizard card I just communicated. And you know what? I believe over time, with awareness, these cards will be extremely valuable, because Charizard and because Pokemon has shown such tremendous growth. Because why? That triangle again. The high-valued consumers start to show themselves as the age of the demographic goes up. So if you go back to 1999 when Pokemon kicked off, you're talking about 6 to 10-year-olds, right? Today, those kids are 26 to 32, and they've got a little bit of money, they've got a little bit of influence, and they have access and proximity to money, and they're able to influence others. Wait 15 years, and let's check back in about where the valuation of some of this stuff is, because that market is fully baked with 45-year-old people who have access to capital.
How cool is that? I mean, so like Pokemon is always a little bit lost on me. I have a deep appreciation for it, as I do, even just because I don't, wasn't into something. And it's just because I was 84, I was, 14, 15 by the time it debuted. So I missed that window, similar to why everybody who listens to our podcast knows I recently got really into Masters of the Universe, but I have I've got no nostalgia for it, because by the time I was 4 years old, it was basically done. It was Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, and the NBA, which was like, it's funny to think of, sports as an entertainment property, but that was the time when sports was really becoming an entertainment property. But with something like Pokemon, I completely agree, because now everything you just said, not the brand has proven that it has life well beyond maybe what the normal shelf life of a normal brand is. And it's not only, people are not only nostalgic for the original stuff, but it Pokemon Go comes out, and then like Jazwares, what you guys have done, or with Wicked Cool, like, putting out the toys and everything else. And it's going to keep going. Like that train's on the tracks for a very long time.
And it was really an amazing time. I mean, Pokemon, so I've been involved with Pokemon since 2006. When I was an executive in a prior company, and we were able to get the brand from Hasbro. And by developing very deeply into the brand, we grew it significantly. And so when I had the opportunity with my business partners to pitch for Pokemon in 2016, we were very fortunate that they, wanted not only for us to make their product globally, but they also invested in our organization, which was amazing. And really that came to fruition partially because of the strength of Pokemon Go. They had made a investment in that company. Pokemon Go was on fire. And by the way, it still is. Don't let anybody fool you. It's still one of the hottest apps and games out there.
100%.
And we were very fortunate to be their second investment. And so, look, I don't know if karma's real, But I will tell you that your deeds over the course of time and the way you treat other people does come back to you. It may not come back in the way you would expect it, but it definitively comes back to you. And so that was a great example of trust formed over a long period of time that turned into an amazing situation.
That's great. What a great story. And it's just a cool brand, and it's got worldwide, recognition. Even now, the Ryan Reynolds movie came out, and like people, I feel like I still haven't seen it, but I feel like people, it maybe we had an underground following for a long time, and that's just no longer the case. It's a major player.
And one of the things I also find interesting is as I collect Pokemon product, what I find is that it's evolving now from being that first generation of collector to an investment collector, like people that are putting more money into it.
Right.
And it's a global phenomenon. Like half the stuff I'm buying is from Denmark or Norway or Finland or the UK or Australia or Asia, or even some stuff from Africa. Like it's all over the world. It's a wonderful, wonderful brand to be a part of.
When you look at the current collectibles market in general, whether it be cards or toys or figures, are you thinking 5-10 years out? Like what are you looking at new properties? Like if you're like prospecting or kind of because it seems like that's what you're as far as collecting goes, you're looking at something that maybe it's a diamond in the rough right now, but 10 years from now, it could be, it could be that Charizard or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to brands, if you're looking to maximize, I would say look for brands that have become lifestyle brands like He-Man or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, where people never let them go, where they used to be 10, but now they're 30 and they're still excited. A brand that's about 20 years old starts to really gain that secondary market value in a meaningful way. By the time they're 30 years old, again, you've got kids that are now turning 40, 45. Like, then you've got a full-on, like, fully vetted brand. And so what I think is going to happen is, like, you go forward 10 years, and you're going to see, like, brands like Harry Potter, Neopets, Pokemon, Magic continuing, just gaining in value because, again, people have had a career and now they are investing more deeply into the brands and the things that they loved.
Right.
And just after that, Roblox, Minecraft, keep going. And this stuff becomes very, very interesting to people.
Yeah, I speaking of He-Man and Masters of the Universe, I know you were involved, or I think you had some involvement in a lot of
the 2000X series.
Yeah, which is cool. I'm staring at a trap jaw from that series right now. It's just out of reach. Somebody sent it to me. I'm not currently collecting that line, but anytime I make a big proclamation of a toy line I'm not going to collect, it's usually the next week when I start. But I have been going back and getting a lot of the classics, which was the line, the Matty Collector line that launched in 2009, and it's just they've skyrocketed. I mean, it's hard to find any of those figures of main characters for under 100, even loose.
Of the 2000X line?
So that line, it's not quite.
Oh, the 80s line, the early 80s line.
It's actually the 2009 line, the second reboot. Right.
The third wave. The third wave.
Now, the vintage stuff is extremely expensive, obviously, especially when you get to those B and C characters. But the line that you worked on or had a lot of involvement in, all day, $35, $40, $50 in package, and I'm not as familiar with it now, but I'm learning.
Let me give you a little bit of inside baseball because it's been 20 years.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So when we launched He-Man in 2001, basically or 2002, it was we overly embedded He-Man and Skeletor into the mix.
Okay.
We were in a situation where, Mattel was still figuring itself out as a collector-driven organization. I have plenty of friends there, and I think so was the entire toy community. This is not a Mattel issue. This was an entire toy community issue.
Right.
And one of the things that was told to us is you have to have 66% He-Man and Skeletor in the mix. Well, with the experience that I have today, I would have been like, heck no, definitely not. This has to be, every character. The way we developed the wrestling business. I mean, if we made 66% John Cena, it would have been dead very quickly.
Right.
And frankly speaking, that hurt us. If we would have developed Masters of the Universe to be what it was in the early 80s, where you'd go to the shelf and they had 18 characters at a time or whatever it was, and with no real specific overabundance of He-Man and Skeletor, I mean, I think that we would have lasted many, many years longer. Yeah. But all of these things are only known in retrospect. And I think when He-Man comes back, and I know that it's in the process, right, of a movie content, and I'm sure they're not going to manage it where it's, let's make sure that 2 out of every 3 things is He-Man and Skeletor. Right. It'll be much more broad this time around.
Mattel is relaunching again. They're doing an Origins line. So basically they're doing a full line that are based, more articulated versions of the vintage 80s line.
Cool.
So cool stuff. But I think that 20-year window is about right because, I bought and sold toys full time for a very short period of my life. At least that's what I told my parents. I just lost my job. I was like, I'm just going to try buying and selling toys and quickly realized.
When was this?
2010, 2011. So this was a really bad time. This is when Pawn Stars started getting really popular and everybody thought that everything they had was worth either eBay prices or it became hard to flip and to make any real profit. But 20 years that the He-Man line you worked on, those are increasing in prices because there's a whole generation of kids who that was their first introduction to the line. So it's interesting.
The 2 figures not to buy are Spin Blade He-Man and Something Blade Skeletor, because I remember that I personally was the brand manager and way overproduced those 2 figures. Again, when you're early in your career, you're subject to making more mistakes. And that's probably one of the bigger mistakes I've ever made in my career. Sling Blade, whatever the heck it was, Something Blade and Something Blade. Just avoid those like the plague. That's all I'm saying.
We'll avoid those ones. I still want to talk about these AEW figures because I think it's really interesting that this experience now that you have all this experience of, oh, look at that. Wow. Yeah. Wow, that packaging is great, by the way.
Jackson, the packaging is beautiful, right?
That is beautiful. So for those who don't know, Wave 1 is going to be hitting pretty soon, the next 4 to 6 weeks, something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful. Look at that. I think what's really cool about this is that, AEW is still an upstart brand, and there's a lot of kids out there who might not even know it exists yet. So you not only have the opportunity to take advantage of a collector's market where they're going to get Cody, they're going to get Brandy and Jericho and the Bucks and Omega, and they're going to get the ringside exclusives and all that, but you're also going to be able to have kids, walking through Walmart who maybe they only know John Cena or, Seth Rollins or The Undertaker. Right. They haven't even been exposed to AEW yet.
Yeah, and maybe this will be something like, wow, what is that? I need to check it out. Because honestly, that's the way a lot of things happen in life. I remember as a kid, going to retail and falling in love with something that I didn't know, and then I learned more about it. And I think it's one of the purest ways to learn about a brand is seeing the product first. It's not the most successful strategy for a consumer products company to follow, but on an individual basis, look, I remember being a kid and going to retail and finding brands I just didn't even know. I didn't think I saw Star Wars until I saw the figures. And when I saw the figures, I was like, whoa, that is awesome. What the heck is that? Right. And it made me more interested. G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe I collected before I ever saw the entertainment, ever. Because I just thought it was so cool to have, these series of heroes that were associated with, America and defending our country and da-da-da-da-da. It's very cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I'm kind of the funny thing is I'm that way now because I was pretty singularly focused as a kid, but now I'm trying to have a more general knowledge of the history of toys and maybe different brands and things that I wasn't into as a kid. That I just want to learn everything there is to learn. Want to know where they came from, what made them successful, what made them not successful. But I agree with you. Is it so? Fortnite is a big deal across the board. Jazwares has the Fortnite branding or the toy line.
Yep.
Is it? And I don't know anything about Fortnite. I just know that it's a huge game and kids play it, and that's the extent of my knowledge.
Yes.
You're very collector focused, but also you're making a mass market toy line with AEW and some other lines. Well, just in general, I'm sure there's a lot of market research and data that suggests maybe otherwise, but my feeling is that the attention span of a kid is a lot less than it used to be. And maybe I'm wrong, but I guess the question I'm asking is, when you're putting out a new toy line, how much of knowing what a kid in 1985 might go to the toy store and want one of every single G.I. Joe figure, one of every single Star Wars figure, and that was their entertainment. You're kind of competing with a lot of different stuff these days. So forgetting the collector's market for a second, how do you guys approach that when you're launching a new line?
Well, look, it's yeah. And we've lost Toys R Us. So we've lost the toy store. So look, it used to be there were fewer brands, and there was a repository of collectibles and toys with Toys R Us. It's really, really difficult to break through to mass retail. There's just no doubt. But you tend to get a sense as to how to play that game and know what brands to look for and how to position them and what's worked in the past. And I'd say that we certainly are quite good at that. But yeah, you say no a lot more nowadays. If there's 100 things presented to you, you might say no 99 times. Back, 20 years ago, if there were 100 things presented to you, you might say no 89 times. Right. It's just there's so much more. But yeah, look, the impact is still very, very tremendous. And plus now, you've got online. And even though there's no toy store with Toys R Us, every retailer has the opportunity to go deeper because they have an online presence. And certainly, look, I'd say Amazon probably has practically everything that you may have found at Toys R Us, and with a little even more obscurities. But there's really nothing like going to the store and experiencing it firsthand.
No, those are the best memories. And that's another, I'm glad you brought that up because, really, as far as mass market, big box retail, it is Walmart and Target. And to get shelf space, anybody who watches Shark Tank knows that it's not easy to get shelf space.
Probably not.
So with the AEW figures now, what is the strategy? Those will be in Walmart first, or how does that work?
So at retail, they'll be at Walmart first. Walmart has the brick and mortar exclusive. Okay. And but also available online at Ringside Collectibles as well as Walmart.com.
Very cool. Very cool.
And going into next year, going into spring, we'll be opening it up for sure.
Cool. Yeah, and I think what I'm excited about with and it's weird because I always tell people I'm much more than a casual wrestling fan because I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts and I've kept up with it, at least have my finger on the pulse for basically my entire life. But it's hard to there's a lot of wrestling content out there. But obviously AEW is making waves and is a big deal. So that's got to just be exciting knowing that you're starting at the ground up and really I've seen you on Twitter, you're asking people for ideas, you're connecting with fans. There's limitless possibilities when it comes to this. So how do you approach it? Obviously you're making figures of wrestlers. These are professional wrestlers. They have their characters. They've got their gimmicks and their costumes and they wrestle in a wrestling ring. So as a longtime person in the toy industry, what are those out of the box conversations like? How do we differentiate? So how do we make ourselves different from what Mattel's doing or different from what happened at Jax or whatever? Because that to me, you're a creative. So that has to be the most exciting part.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think if you look at the progression of the action figure universe, at least in the wrestling figures, you went from LJN. Well, actually, I won't even go prior to LJN, but you went LJN with the big, bulky, sort of rubbery figures to the Hasbros, which were still not necessarily realistic, but had a battle action, to Jakks, which were much more realistic and became even more realistic over the course of time, to Mattel, where they nailed the scale. And now I think for us, if we did any improvements, it's really maybe to articulation and to also kind of reach backwards and put together some of that collector packaging that people love, that cost a little bit more money for the manufacturer, but really puts you in a situation where you look at it and go, wow, that's something I want to display. But I think over the course of time, you constantly see figures looking more and more realistic. And, I'm sure at some point you'll reach terminal realism, and then then you go backwards. Maybe then you start celebrating some of the more primitive figures that came before it as part of the exploratory exercise.
I mean, that's always the funny thing about the way that, nostalgia works, is that you hit the point where it can't get any better. You see it with like retro gaming. I saw you made a post, saw a couple people post this about the Super Mario Brothers, the copy that sold. Yeah, it's insane. But even though the PS5 is going to have an incredible, it's only so much, you can only get so much better. So then people start looking backwards. They bust out their PlayStation or their Nintendo 64, and yeah.
And I think the retro gaming market is truly coming into its own now. I think that a lot of people are going to start investing in vintage gaming. But look, why not? It's a tangible object that represents something that you loved. And why wouldn't it have premium value, even though a lot of the utility is on the digital element that's inside the cartridge? It still represents something that you engaged with so much as a child. I think that the value of that is going to maintain and grow over time.
Right. And for me as a collector, I like to display things. So to me, I've been looking at the old the first two Back to the Future games for Nintendo. I'm not going to play them, but I want the box art, and I want the cartridge and the game guide and everything, because I had it and now I need to have it again.
Absolutely. No, I think anything that has that tangible element, look, we're losing some of that nowadays. The stuff that's purely digital is a little bit more difficult to embrace as you get older. How do you show off a digital avatar? I don't know. So I think that collecting is evolving. Obviously, my kid plays Roblox. We make Roblox toys, but my kid plays Roblox. She has a PhD in it at this point. Right, I think she's, and she has digital elements, whether it be gear or pets or characters, that have premium secondary market value. But it's still not something that you can show off on a shelf. So I imagine we're going to get to a point one day where there'll be avatars that you can't replicate or duplicate that you can show off in some sort of tangible way.
Right.
But right now we're still kind of not necessarily there yet. I don't know the asset that would allow you to show that stuff off.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking like one of those digital picture frames, but that's because my mind doesn't, it's hard. Like when they put out like a new video game, like NBA 2K or whatever, and it's like there's the gold edition, the platinum edition, and to me, I'm like, cool. What is it? What is that tangible thing it comes with? Is it a Funko Pop? Is it and it's like, no, you just get more stuff in the game, and that's always hard for me to. I'm like, well, how do I take a picture of it?
Absolutely. And so I think it's a missed opportunity. And certainly there is the opportunity to work with gaming companies to provide something tangible to say, I had the Platinum Edition, and here's how you know, because I have this thing. And I honestly think that is a whole business model that is waiting to happen.
Oh, 100%. I don't remember what it was. I was in a GameStop this was before quarantine or anything like that, but I was in a GameStop and they were running some promotion. I think it was a limited edition enamel pin for Fortnite.
Cool.
And they had sold out immediately, and I was in there for 10 minutes, and I think they probably got 15 or 20 phone calls in the 10 minutes, people looking for it. So I agree with you. It is a missed opportunity. Well, listen, we'll get close to wrapping up here. I really appreciate the conversation. I think.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I mean, it's a blast for me to chat about this stuff, and I'm always excited to communicate, with people who are passionate about this and dedicating a part of their life towards celebrating it. And it's just great to see you doing this. You do such a great job, and also connecting the community. Any chance I get, just to validate the fact that they've given me so much in my life that I'm passionate about. So thank you for that, really.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. It's funny because it's like I finish up the day job and then I hop over to the night job, and at some point I sleep. I'm not sure when that is, but yeah, it's great.
But you're dedicating a portion of your life to something that you have a deep passion for. Yep. And whether it's 100% of your professional life or whether it's 5% of your professional life, you have something at stake. You have a toe in it. And in your case, a lot more than that. And what I say to people, because I challenge people all the time, like, are you doing what you feel passionate about? It doesn't mean you have to do what you feel passionate about for a career or every day or every second. It just means that if you like gardening and you're not the state park arborist, that's fine. But have a little garden. Plant a tomato garden. Plant something. Have a thumb in it, because that is good for your soul.
100%.
And someone said to me the other day, like, oh, I wish I had a retail store. I'm like, well, you can. Go on eBay, set up a storefront, sell 2 or 3 things a month. Go and buy. So it doesn't even matter. Go to a yard sale. Find a few things that you find fun. Even if you make $50 that month, it's you've got a finger, a toe, an arm in stuff that you feel passionate about, and that's enough. I mean, I'll tell you, like, my cup overfloweth with the stuff that I love in my life. But even when the day will come where it won't, the day will come where I'm retired or I'm no longer, focused on toys and collectibles professionally anymore. And I'll keep a toe in for sure. No doubt about it. I may not work at a toy company, but I'll collect and I'll talk about it and I'll always be in it. So my parting words really are follow your passions at least a little bit. Keep it in your life. Keep it close to your heart. And I love what you're doing. It's very clear to me that you're living your professional career, but you're also living your passions as well. And they may be one and the same, but you are definitely doing both.
Well, I appreciate that. That's good. That's some. I like inspirational. We have a Facebook group for the podcast called Group Therapy, where we just all get in there. Our number one rule is no memes. We want discussion. We want no cheap pops. We want and we talk about toys. And the one thing I always tell people, in 2010, I had one action figure. And now I'm sitting in what I would consider my dream room. And people, there's this weird thing that happens with collectors, especially they'll have like this, like, oh, this is my collection. It's small. Don't judge me. And it's like, it's not about that. It's all about what are your passions? And those passions can rapidly change because, I always say I'll never collect Transformers, but maybe one day I will. I don't know. I probably won't, because every time I've ever held a Transformer, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing. But
it's a shared philosophy. It's a shared philosophy. It's right. People who have an affinity for something and they're transactional in nature.
Yep.
And it's that shared philosophy. And the other thing that I love about that philosophy is that it's a philosophy. It's not a skin color. It's not a religion. It's not a socioeconomic affiliation.
Right.
It is truly a philosophy. So I personally don't care whether someone has a $1,000 collection, $100 collection, or $1 million collection. It's the philosophy that connects us. It's not the size of the collection. And that's one thing that I really do love about this.
Yeah, because it's that shared experience of walking into a hobby shop or a toy store or getting on eBay. We do another thing on Friday night. We launched this in quarantine. We do the eBay hang. So we do virtual toy hunting on Friday nights where we get on eBay and we just live stream it, and it turns into a big community conversation of just, egging each other on. Am I going to make an offer? And it's another way to kind of to come together for that, that shared passion. So we love it. We absolutely love it. Listen, this has been great. I got to ask you one more thing. And it just dawned on me right before we started.
Please.
People might not realize, some of your early, in the mid 90s, I've listened to interviews with you and I know a little bit about your history. You had you launched some collectible sites. You were tracking the Beanie Babies. And by the way, my prediction that Funko Pops were modern Beanie Babies has not come to fruition yet because they keep going up in value.
Yeah, they do. And by the way, just to be clear, some of the Beanie Babies have escalated in value too. But again, it's all about rarity. It's all about scarcity. It's all about condition.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. They definitely have.
But one of the things you did is you would buy up these domain names early on.
Yeah.
And there was the report this week of the guy who about 10 years ago had bought all of these possible domain names for the future Washington Redskins name change. And I don't know if you read about this, but he owns like 20 of these names that are all rumored names. And now he's got the Red Tails and the Washington Generals. He bought them all, basically looking in the future saying eventually the Redskins are going to change their name. And, now he's going to have to, there's a good chance he's going to profit off of it, which is kind of interesting.
So it's very interesting. And, trademark law is fascinating, right? Because the way it works is this: if you have something that is merely generic in scope, it's impossible for someone that owns a trademark or a piece of a trademark to take it from you.
Right.
So I had act.com in the 1990s, and I sold it to Symantec. They make act scheduling software. They couldn't come to me and say, hey, you're violating our trademark, give us act.com. They can only say, hey, we own a piece of this mark. And as a piece of this mark owner, we would like to own act.com. But if you owned Pepsi.com, it's considered arbitrary in scope. It's not, it's a made up name. So the odds of you losing that on a challenge are very high.
Wow.
In a situation where you have precognition that there may be a name change in the future, I would say that they're very well protected in terms of their domain name ownership. And that regardless of what their intentionality was, and if I were them, I wouldn't be actively saying, hey, I bought this thinking the Redskins are going to change their name.
Right. That could really come back in court.
I would say, I love Washington, and all of these things made total sense to me. And one day I'm going to name my company one of these things.
Yeah.
I don't know, intentionality means something. So if I were them, I might be a little more careful about the way I'm communicating that. But I think it's pretty brilliant that they anticipated a name change one day.
Yeah.
But my advice to them is to, maybe perhaps not talk about the fact that they're targeting the Washington Redskins.
Right.
Bad idea. Yeah. That's just my opinion, my humble opinion.
I'll have to go.
2 cents.
I'll have to go back and read the article. I think what happened was somebody discovered it maybe 5 or 10 years ago and wrote up an article about, hey, some guy owns all these names, and it was just kind of whatever. And now it's happening. So
that's different. And if I were that person that owned those names right now, I'd be really thinking about the fact that I have an eBay store that I'm trying to figure out which one of these Washington names I'm going to be naming it.
Yep. I'm good guy. I like that. I just love Washington. I just love it.
I love Washington. It's my favorite.
It's
my favorite.
Well, listen, Jeremy, we'll have to catch up down the road. Hopefully things improve in the world, and maybe Toy Fair will get rolling, and we'll meet up. And man, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I know you guys probably have really cool stuff in the pipeline. And I made it a point not to go. My buddy goes, hey, try to ask these questions. And I looked at him, it's like, you guys going to do 2-packs? What about this wrestler? What about that wrestler? It's all coming. We know it's coming. But I like having a broad conversation about collectibles. And
listen, I like it too. And I don't mind the specifics. And yes, we're going to end up doing some 2-packs. And yes, we're going to do that wrestler and this wrestler. So
okay.
I've answered the question.
You can tell that to Ryan specifically.
Ryan, I swear to you, at some point in time, we're going to hit all of the stuff that you're looking for. Because if anything, we're prolific in terms of the way we develop at Jazwares. So
cool. So Jeremy Padawer, very much appreciate it. Loved having you on, and good luck with everything. Good luck with continuing to be, I read today, a Hall of Famer, a Toy Fair Hall of Famer. I think it was Toy Fair Magazine. God, I missed it.
Yeah, that was awesome. I loved that. That was one of the unexpected moments of my career. And I'll end this like this. It's tax day today, right? They extended tax payments for 3 months. I never fought for the country. I never put on a military gear. But I feel like it's the most patriotic act outside of that you can do to make sure you pay your taxes. So I always feel like a patriot when tax day is due and I owe money, because I feel like I'm doing my part, even though I didn't do my part as a patriot fighting for our country. But all due respect to everybody out there that does that. And there's Veterans Day, there's Memorial Day, there's all these days where you think about veterans. I think about them today.
There you go.
I know those tax dollars go to the right place, and or at least I hope they do. And like I said before, on a separate note, keep a toe dipped firmly in your passions. Keep it in there, because at the end of the day, that's what keeps our heart beating, right?
100%. That's what it's all about. I like this. This was inspirational. Next time we'll have you on, and we'll talk about if you've got that Hulk Hogan card yet, because I know it slipped through your hands this week.
Yeah, a horrible outcome. Finishing second didn't feel very good, but you know what? Somebody wanted it really, really badly.
Right. Well, listen, everybody. Jeremy Padawer, AEW, Jazwares. It's all happening. Keep an eye out at Ringside Collectibles for those exclusives, and hit Walmart. Let them know. Buy that stuff. That's the only way that these lines can be successful, as we go out and support them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is great.